My name is Nick Hoekstra, and this is River's BJJ, the gym or dojo where I currently train Brazilian Jiu Jitsu and help to instruct Judo. I'm a black belt in Judo and a purple belt in Brazilian Jiu Jitsu, and I am blind. The grappling arts, such as Judo and Brazilian Jiu Jitsu, are great for people with visual impairments because they rely on feeling an opponent's movements. There are still adaptations that can make both arts even more inclusive. For example, when I begin a match, my opponent and I start with grips at the collar and sleeve so that we are both even and so that my opponent cannot attack me without me feeling. Right now, due to COVID-19, we've had to make some accommodations that have actually made the environment even more inclusive. As you can see, the room is divided into sections using plastic cones, so that each group has their own designated training area. This is great for me because I always know where my space is, and I can feel the cones while I'm training. There is also music playing softly in the background. The music is never loud enough to be a distraction, or so that I cannot hear the people around me, but it helps me always find the front of the room. River's BJJ is one of the most inclusive groups of people I have ever trained with. Trevor Rivers, one of our instructors, often uses me to demonstrate new techniques. This way, I can feel his movement while the rest of the class watches. This is a great option for teaching a blind student, though I do not expect that the instructors will always use me for demonstrations. Sometimes the instructors want to use students with different body types, and this is all part of inclusion. In those cases, one of the instructors or an experienced student will go over the technique with me in our small groups. Learning martial arts has not always been easy for me. When I began studying Judo in Japan, other students were sometimes reluctant to train with me, either because they were afraid I couldn't train as hard, or perhaps were worried that I might win and beat them. My instructor at the time, Katsuhiko Kashiwazaki, told me that I should train with the women's judo team because they were accustomed to being underestimated, and they would treat me the same as they treated anyone else. He also felt that the women had better judo. Whereas men often fight with strength, the women's judo team focused on balance, timing, and good technique. And Kashiwazaki sensei was a world champion, so I wasn't going to argue with his evaluation. Because I've been training for almost 20 years, I also sometimes help instruct. When I demonstrate a technique, I often talk about how it feels as much as how it looks. I think this is important for students because it gives them multiple sensory cues to think about while they are training, what they have seen, and what they should feel. This is Heidi Thompson, one of our instructors here at Rivers BJJ. And Heidi, I wanted to ask you, when you think of making the gym an inclusive environment, what comes to your mind?
Just from experience teaching both the kids and the adults, what I notice is, not a lot of difference between the two. Everyone has a different learning style. Some learn by that tactile touch, some learn from seeing me move through the motions, and then some just learn by repeating it, in their mind, all of the steps. So for anyone, whether it be a child, a woman, a man, someone who's blind, you're gonna have a different way of reaching them to get them to understand the information. And that's one of the biggest things that I think of when I'm preparing something to be taught, is how they're going to take that information and make it accessible to the way that they learn.
In the end, inclusion is not about any one single adaptation. Inclusion requires an instructor to be open-minded, to work with his or her students to understand their needs, and perhaps most of all, to believe that inclusion will benefit every member of the club, gym, or dojo.